This session is on inheritance. So inheritance represents parent-child relationship. So some examples of inheritance are vehicle and a car, animal and a dog, person and an employee. So if you see all these examples, they represent is a relationship. So if you say car is a vehicle, dog is a animal, employee is a person. So when whichever objects basically satisfy the is a relationship, they can be considered as inheritance. They can be made as a child class of the. They can be made as child class for that particular parent class. So here inheritance basically promotes reusability. So how it is achieved is child object basically acquires the properties and behaviors of the parent object. So what does it mean? So for example, a person is going to have um, a first name, last name and age. Employee is going to also have first name, last name and age. Along with that, he is going to have few more properties, which may be an employee ID and a salary. So those properties are specific to employee, but he also have the properties of person. So it is when you inherit employee from a person object, you don't need to basically redefine all the properties that is given for a person. So you can basically reuse those properties. So that is what we say, child object basically acquires all the properties and behaviors from the parent object. And you can consider, like, if you are traveling in a flight and if you are trying to see down, you will be seeing all the places in a very broader view. And the more and more you land down, you will be seeing them in a closer proximity, where you can see those images with very specific images. But when you go upper and upper, it will be more generic and broader. So inheritance is kind of like that. The parent class will be defining uh, more in terms of abstract way, while you go into child classes, it will be more specific. It will be more to the details. So that is what we'll see. Let's say when I say vehicle, it's a broader term. It can be any vehicle, but car is a specific type of vehicle. You can still drill down to say sedan car, which is a subtype of a car. So basically inheritance promotes reusability, where the child class acquires the properties and behaviors of the parent object. So there are different types of inheritance. These are the types that Java supports. First is a single inheritance. An example of single inheritance is animal and a dog, where one class is inheriting from another class. The other one is multi-level inheritance. So we have employee extending from person and manager extending from employee. So manager inherits from my employee, and employee inherits from person. So we are having as multi-level inheritance. The one more inheritance which is supported by Java is hierarchical inheritance. What is hierarchical inheritance is more than one class can subclass from a parent class. An example is, report is the parent class, and you can PDF report can extend from report, as well as Excel report can subclass from the report class. There are a few unsupported types in Java. These are all form of inheritance, but Java does not support it. So one is the multiple inheritance. What is multiple inheritance is like one child class extending from two parent class. An example is child is inheriting from a father and a mother. So this is not supported in Java. And the other one is hybrid inheritance, which is kind of a combination of multiple and multi-level inheritance. So in this case, student and employee is extending from a person class, which is supported, but at the same time, one more part-time employee who is actually an employee, but he is also a student. So that so he's extending the properties of both student and employee. This type of inheritance is not supported in Java, which is a kind of a multiple inheritance, but it is not supported in Java. But multiple inheritance is indirectly achieved by means of interfaces. There is a concept called interfaces in Java, which we are going to learn, which by which we can indirectly achieve multiple inheritance. So in Java 8, this multiple inheritance concept, Java 8 and above, basically, they support multiple inheritance by means of default methods. So we will learn that while we cover the Java 8 actually. But before Java 8, the multiple inheritance, or even with Java 8, there is no multiple inheritance still supported by Java, which means one class cannot extend more than one classes. So I cannot say child class extending from father and a mother class. It can be indirectly achieved through interfaces, but as such, the class cannot extend from more than one class. So let's see a Java example for this. I have a person class which has first name, last name, and age, and it has two instance methods, which is get full name and is eligible to vote. So this is the parent class. Person is a parent class, and it's having some properties like first name, last name, and age, and it is having some behaviors like get full name and is eligible to vote. So I'm going to have a child class which is an employee class. So when I wanted to extend from person class, what I have to name it is public class employee extends person. So I will write an employee class in a new file, employee.java, and which is going to extend from a person class. So here, when I say extends person, that means it is going to acquire all the properties of the person class. So I don't need to redefine first name, last name, age again in the employee class. Otherwise, if you think about employee properties, employee is also having the same properties like person, and it is also having the same behaviors of the person. So you can get a full name of an employee, you can get a whether you can see whether an employee is eligible to vote or not. So the behaviors can also be extended, as well as first name, last name, age is the properties can also be reused by the employee class. So, but I don't need to redefine them because I say with a simple keyword extends person, that means it is going to inherit the features of person class in the employee class. Now, employee, though it is inheriting, it is also going to add its own properties. So employee properties are employee ID and salary, which is not going to be for every person, but it is going to be for every employee. So there is one instance method which is going to display the employee details here. So as you see in the display method, we are printing the name, and in the name we are calling get full name, and get full name is not from the employee class, it is a method in the person class. Still I can access it from the employee class because I was extending from the person class. And then age is not a property defined in the employee class, but I can still access the property which is defined in the person class. And I also access the employee ID and the salary, which is a part of the employee class. So in order to test this employee class, we write a employee test class which is having a main method, in which I'm going to create an employee object by means of employee is equal to new employee of. Once we create an employee object, now this with this handle of or with the reference of employee object, I can access the employee variables as well as the person variables. So how do I do that? I can set e dot first name equal to Jeff, last name equal to Tak, and e dot age is equal to 45. So this is something I'm accessing the person properties, and then I'm going to access the employee properties with the same e reference, where I'm going to access the employee ID and salary. So I set up all these values, and once I set up all these values, I'm going to call the display method. So when I call the display method, this is from the employee class, which is going to print all the details. And finally, I can use even the employee class object to call directly the get full name method or is eligible to vote by means of e dot is eligible to vote, or I can say is e dot get full name. So in this case, what is the output that is going to get displayed is name, age, and employee ID and salary, and after that is eligible to vote is going to give true or false. So by means of with the employee object itself, I can access all the properties of person class as well as all the properties and methods of employee class. So here, by this way, it is employee class is by means of inheritance we are promoting the reusability. I don't have to redefine all the first name, last name, age, get full name, is eligible to vote again in the employee class. So by this way we can promote reusability by means of inheritance. Okay, let's learn about object class. So there is a class in Java called object. Just like we have a public class person, we have a public class object. So don't confuse with Java objects and this object class. Object is a class available in Java. So this is the parent class of everything. So the object class is written by the Java. By this is a kind of the methods that is available in the object class. As you see here, you have some methods named as native, which means it is not implemented by JDK, but it's going to be implemented by the underlying system, which is JVM. It's a native method. It's going to be implemented by the JVM, corresponding to the OS operating system. So we have some methods like boolean equals, public string to string. So these methods have implementation in the object class, which we will be learning in the next sessions. So we have a public class person. So when I say public class person, what I said is, object class is a super class or the parent class of everything. So here I define a public class person. So what happens internally is compiler is going to replace this one with this definition. It was originally, if you write just public class person, it is going to make it as public class person extends object. So whether you give it or not, the compiler is going to add this extends object automatically. If you define an employee class, where in the employee class you say employee extends person, so it is not going to add it. If you don't extend from any class, the compiler is going to defaultly extend from the object class. So in one way or the other, by default, all the classes extend from the object class, directly or indirectly. So in the case of employee, what is going to happen is employee extends from the person class, and person extends from the object class, which means employee is extending from object class. So when I say when you are extending from some class, that means we are acquiring the properties and behaviors of the class. So in the employee class, I can access the equals method and the hash code method or any other method that is defined in the object class. So let's look at some examples in Eclipse. Let's do these programs in Eclipse, in fact. So I already have a person class here, so let me create a new person class. So I'll create it in a new different package. So let's have a person class again. I will create it with inheritance. Oops.inheritance and say finish. So we have string, first name, string, last name, integer, age, and we also have some instance methods, which is public. You don't need public. We'll see why. What is public in the later sessions. So it is optional. If you want to add it, you can have it. Public. The method name is going to be string. It's going to return string, and method name is get full name. So this is returning first name, and add a space to it, and last name. So we define one more method, public boolean, which is going to return true or false, is eligible to out. So this is going to return if age is greater than or equal to 18, it is going to return true, otherwise it is going to return false. Okay, so our person class is ready. So let's define an employee class now. Finish. So I'm going to make this employee class extends from person class. So now when it is extending, it's going to get all the properties. Along with that, I'm going to define its own properties, which is employee ID and salary. We are going to write a method which is going to display all the details of employee. So I'm going to write a method display, which is going to have what details. Okay. First, it can access the get full name method. So I'm putting this out, printing the name and say get full name. So as you see, it is not complaining me anything because this get full name method comes from the person class. So you can access it from the employee object. Then I'm going to access the age directly. Oops. And then we'll access the employee ID. Finally, salary of the employee. Okay, so now I can test this employee class by means of writing another program, a test class. And have a main method. When you run it, you can test this. So creating an employee object. Once we create an employee object, I'm going to. So as you put dot, you see that I can access age, which is a prop, which is coming from the. You can see from which class it is coming. It is coming from person class. Employee is coming from employee class. So we can even see from where it is coming from. So we can give first name James, last name, and then age, make it 21. Then I can also access the employee properties, employee ID 1001 and salary. Okay, so I've set up the state of the object. So now I can access the behavior of the object. So I can simply say e dot display, which is going to display the details. The second thing I can do is I can also sys out the e dot is eligible to vote. So which is going to decide whether this employee is eligible to vote or not. So run this program. You see the results as expected. So that covers your inheritance. Let's talk about constructors in the next session.